my team, you're my clients, you're my partners, and my friends. And the best days in life are when we are surrounded by our people, and that's today. Welcome everyone, and I really hope that you are excited about today as I am. So before we get started, I think some quick thank yous are in order. First of all, I want to recognize the best executive assistant on this planet, Carissa Nickel. She has never seen this. She keeps me staying punctual, but Carissa has been working tirelessly over the last several weeks to make this a great experience for you guys. And she's had also a great support team from Lee, Rachel, Anna, and Haley, and then several other Brooks Bell team members who have all played a part in the Click Summit. So thank you guys. I also want to thank Adam and the Telium team for being really fantastic partners for us throughout the year, but especially today and tomorrow for sponsoring this event and making it a lot more possible for us to deliver this high-end experience for you guys. And also, I want to do a quick shout out to the rest of the partners who are here. You guys are the ones who are creating the amazing technology that enables all of our success. I mean, there would be no Brooks Bell without the technology that we use. And then our clients and our friends. Thank you guys for flying all the way to Raleigh to stay in the most uncomfortable hotel on the East Coast, but also for being here to share your expertise with each other and with us, and for participating fully in the conversations. Okay, so while I was thinking about what I was going to talk about this morning, I decided that it would be a good idea to learn a little bit about the audience, see who's going to be here. So I did some research on you. It's not too creepy, I promise. So first, I looked at the gender makeup and saw that 56% of the people here are men. And that's actually a little bit lower than, frankly, I expected. But which gender do you think does most of the online shopping? It's women. Women make 80% of the buying decisions every year. So that means that most of us in this room have implicit biases that differ from the majority of the shoppers in the US. We are not our customer. So now let's look at education. 98% of you have a college degree. That's not surprising. Testing is also pretty hard. But then this drops to 32% when we take into account the rest of the US. We're vastly more educated than most Americans. We are not our customer. So now I looked at where we work and where we live. And I saw that 80% of us live in an urban center near the water. But then I realized that 30% of Americans have never seen the ocean. Raise your hand if you flew on a plane to get here. Like pretty much everybody. So did you know that 60% of Americans haven't been on a plane this year, and 1 in 5 haven't been on a plane in their whole life? We are not our customer. So then, now let's look at politics. Raise your hand if you voted for, never mind. We probably shouldn't go there this morning. But again, we're not our customer. So who in here likes people watching? Everybody. I love people watching. We all like people watching. So have you ever thought about why people watching is so interesting? It's interesting when we're looking at people who are different from us. I think people watching has gotten a lot more interesting recently because of social media. Because social media does a great job surrounding ourselves with people just like us, and then when we're exposed to all the diversity that's out there, it's a reminder, that there's a lot of different people out there that we just don't get exposed to as much as we should. Speaking of that, has anyone been to Vegas? It is a fascinating place. And there is top-notch people watching in Vegas. So I was there a few months ago, and I realized I had a front row seat to a great cross-section of all the people who are buying our stuff. So I was there for the Adobe conference, and they were talking about the importance of personalization, the time to come, we're in the age of the customer experience. And they were saying, it's time that we all aspire to deliver personalized experiences to all the demographics of the people who shop from us. And of course, their technology is going to make that easy peasy. So I was standing in the lobby of the Mirage, looking around at the crowds around me, thinking about personalization and thinking about what would be the strategy to deliver these experiences to all these types of people. It was overwhelming. I thought, how can we possibly hope to capture all of this and understand how to speak to all these folks that are different from me and different from each other, even if technology is making it easier than it's ever been. Then, as I was standing there, I noticed something. I realized that even though everyone had their individual stories, they were all in Vegas for just 4 or 5 reasons. A lot were here to gamble, some were here to see a show, several were here to go to a conference like me, and some were here to work. And that applies to our sites as well. There's a lot of different types of people who come, but they only come for 4 or 5 reasons. What a relief. It was so great to realize that understanding and trying to target the vast nuances of the human race is not only a daunting task, but it could be a grand waste of time. We just need to reframe this into a different lens and start to ask ourselves, stop focusing on the who and start focusing on the why. When you think about it, customer centricity, which Adam talked about this morning as being something that is upon us, really can just boil down to understanding customer intent. So one thing that does frustrate me is that I've been in this industry for a long time, 14 years, and there's always some big trend that we're all talking about. A few years ago it was big data. Now we're in the thick of personalization and customer centricity. And both have a lot of truth, there's a lot of opportunity, we have to really think about this seriously. But the problem is that whenever there is a big trend, all we do is talk and talk and talk about it. But actually coming to work and changing our behavior on a given Monday to do something about it just doesn't happen. I think a lot of times we kind of go to conferences and wait for someone else to follow this trend and show us how to approach it. But we don't really tend to go ourselves first. So when it comes to customer centricity, though, I think this is really important, and I think that it's time that we really take this seriously. And I don't want it to be me to be sitting back and waiting for someone else to go first. So when I came back to Raleigh, I asked my team about customer intent. How are we proactively thinking about customer intent in our own test strategy for our clients? And I looked at the last 10 tests that we had produced, and it wasn't anywhere to be seen. We had been focusing completely on our client agenda, which was usually revenue. Didn't really think that much about what the customer intent was. It became really clear to me that we needed to start to change our own mindset if we aspire to help you guys go down this path of customer centricity. So there are a lot of legitimate reasons that we haven't done this sooner and why this is really hard. First of all, the resources. Like managing one site and optimizing one experience is hard enough as it is. Even if there's only 4 or 5 that we should be optimizing for, that takes 4 to 5 times the resources of people and creative and time and complexity, and like no one wants to deal with that. The second reason it's hard is there's this pesky thing called statistical significance. That's kind of the foundation of our program. And the more we narrow our segments, the harder it is to get that. So that's kind of another limitation. And then there's the big one, and that's called revenue. Revenue is the foundation of all business. Our companies won't stay in business, and we won't have our jobs unless we're driving growth quarter after quarter. And when we're thinking about customer centricity, it could be an opportunity to not be growing revenue immediately. There's this huge pressure to focus on revenue every single time, always. And it's not going to go away. So this is where I'm going to ask you guys to take a risk with me. If we want to take customer centricity seriously, we have got to stop being so obsessed with revenue. So I threw this idea out there to my husband, Jess, who's sitting up here in the front. And this was a few weeks ago. And he is an executive at a public company. And he looked at me like I had just lost my mind. So I hope that I can at least convince you guys over the next few minutes that this is a good idea. Because I truly think this is the path that we need to go. 2 years ago, I was up on the same stage at this event, and I talked about the idea of the dark side of data. And the dark side of data is short-term thinking. When we're running tests in 2 weeks, we want to see a signal those 2 weeks. And so we don't have time to run our tests months over months and months. And so we just focus on things that we can measure immediately. And that is the dark side. But we have got to start to resist this temptation, rise above it, and start taking this long-term mindset a little bit more seriously. We have to trust that even if our measurement isn't perfect, if we adopt this mindset, we will get long-term rewards. Is this an invitation to be lazy? It could be. I mean, if we're not accountable revenue, then what are we accountable for? And that, frankly, is where the risk comes in. But I know that we're better than that. It's also an opportunity to be really smart and figure out some amazing new ways to measure more long-term metrics and to continue to be the leaders in our industry. One company that has proven that this is possible is Amazon. We know that they're known for their long-term mindset and their focus on customer centricity. Jeff Bezos was recently published in Bloomberg, and he said, on long-term perspective, he said, if you are long-term oriented, customer interests and shareholder interests are always aligned. In the short term, that's not always correct. When it comes to showing his commitment to the customer, Jeff has a public email address. It's jeff@amazon.com. And it is just for customer complaints. any of us can email him today and share all of our experiences with shopping on Amazon. And what he's going to do, he reads them all the time, and he is going to take those emails, forward them to the product manager who is responsible for that experience with a single question mark. And believe me, those product managers are terrified of getting one of those emails. So it may be a little bit confrontational, maybe it's a little bit of an uncomfortable culture that is the result of this. But it is delightful to be an Amazon customer. And the result is that they have become one of the most powerful and scary companies in the world. And it sucks to compete with them. All right, so we talked a lot about the problems with testing and testing short term and not being and trying to be customer centric. But let's go through a few of the solutions that I think that we can start to embrace as we return to work next week. I have 5 ideas that I'm going to walk you through. So let's start with the first one. First, we have tons of quantitative data. We're really good with quantitative data. But we have to do a better job adding qualitative data into our test strategy. There are issues with both quantitative data and qualitative. When it comes to qualitative, we could say sample sizes are really small. People just want to tell us what we want to hear. And it's messy to collect it. But together, they create this incredibly powerful picture of the customer. And this is low-hanging fruit. It is not hard to get qualitative data. And it doesn't cost that much money. All we can start doing is let's just take some time to do some user testing sessions. Let's get some mouse tracking installed on our site. Let's start looking at some chat logs. At the end of the day, it's just looking at different ways to have direct conversations with our customers. Even if someone else in the organization is responsible for doing this qualitative research, I don't think that's good enough. And we can't just depend on getting their sterile readouts. We have to get a lot more involved going forward, because today, a lot of us are really too far away from our customer to know what's going on. Facebook is one of the most data-driven companies out there. And they're a level 5 company in our model, our maturity model that we've built. And they mostly focus on their news feed. So when you think about it, the news feed is really what epitomizes a personalized experience. But even Facebook has witnessed the upper limits of using just quantitative data to drive their algorithms. In January, Slate published this amazing article, which I highly recommend you all read. It talked about how Facebook is making the news feed the most optimal experience possible. It talked about how they were looking at different success metrics, and they found that no matter what their success metric, it always resulted in kind of a less than perfect experience. If they focus on to viral videos, just way too many cats. But they found that the best way to solve this problem was when they added a purely human element into the picture. Facebook actually assembled a panel of 1,000 people who, until recently, were all based in Knoxville, Tennessee. And the job of this panel was just to simply look at their news feed, look at every story, and tell Facebook which stories they liked, which they didn't, why they liked the stories, what would make them better. And they would actually write entire paragraphs of insight on every single story that popped up. This panel actually replaced the traditional success metrics for the news feed at Facebook. It made it more relevant, and it also started discovering things that the algorithm never could. One example is when Facebook recently rolled out a new feature where you can actually hide the stories that you don't want to see. And this panel discovered that there was a small group of people who would hide every story on their newsfeed. And the way they were using this feature was almost like a way to clear out their inbox. They would hide them after that they read the story. And so they started calling this group super hiders. So this was a small group, but this behavior was so extreme, it threw off the logic of the algorithm for everybody in the world. And Facebook never would have discovered this had they relied on data alone. So the second idea on becoming more customer-centric is to be a detective. And that's to start to use your program to ask more behavioral questions and collect clues about your customers' needs. This is a great opportunity to start to rethink how we write our hypotheses. Today, a lot of us probably start with an if-then statement about a problem that we want to try to fix. But what if we started it with a question instead? A question about our customer. Like, why does 50% of our traffic bounce? What percentage of our customers have no intent to buy? What is their level of trust that they have with the company today? How much information do they need to feel comfortable buying from us? These are all great questions, and we can build a really incredible test program around that. This is also a great place to start to apply behavioral psychology. There's tons of fascinating books out there that outline our biases, our pain points, our emotional drivers. Some of my favorite principles are like social proof, law of reciprocity, friction, consistency. One thing about this is that it gets really confusing fast, because a lot of these are really great at understanding people, but they don't apply directly to digital shopping that easily. Despite that, we all need to become experts at a lot of these principles, because it is the best way to get into the mindset of our customers. And it is a terrific source of test ideas. To make things a little bit easier for you guys, we've actually gone through an effort recently where we researched a bunch of these books and categorized it, just sifted through all of these things, and narrowed down to 5 principles that we think are most relevant to digital shopping. So I want to share them with you this morning. So first is value. It's a classic value proposition. What is the right value proposition that really speaks to your customer's intent? The second is anxiety. What are the sources of fear and confusion that your customers might have? And then, what are some ways that maybe we could alleviate them? The next is money. Is price an issue for your customer? How much? Does price match the value proposition really well? Then there's mental effort. And this one is an interesting one, I think. This is about what are we doing to increase or decrease the mental effort that is necessary for your customer to achieve their goal? I like this one because it's often in conflict with the other ones. And so it makes things really interesting because we have to balance all of these competing factors. And then there's time. Everyone is pressed for time online. So what can we do to help our customer get to their goal even faster? And speaking of time, I'm not going to spend a lot more time on it this morning, but let's definitely chat about this over the next couple of days. And we're coming up with names for this model. And I'll share with you the name I've been pushing for, and that's the House of Pain and Pleasure. But I think it makes my HR director a little bit too uncomfortable. So, not sure that's going to stick. So the next idea is that we need to make time for the why. We make time for things that we're serious about following through on, and that applies here as well. We spend most of our time focusing on revenue-driving tests. But let's carve out in our test queue maybe 10, 20, 30% of it, and start focusing on customer intent discovery tests. Ones that are not going to necessarily drive immediate revenue, but are going to teach you a lot of really interesting things about your customers. That should be easy. I think we can all do that. And it's going to save you time later. We spend so much time focusing on writing really great problem statements and awesome, super smart hypotheses. But if we flip that time that we spend instead on understanding our customer, the problems are going to become clear. And so are the solutions. I think our testing program will ultimately get a lot more effective and a lot more efficient. This also means that if we start shifting our time to discovering our customer, then we also need to broaden what our definition of success looks like. And that is our fourth idea. This is an image that I think is really great, and it shows how we can build the roads for how we think our customers want to navigate our site, but we may not always get it right. Our customers have their own ideas. We spend so much time and thinking going into how to measure and accomplish our own success as an organization. But what if we started thinking about how to measure and accomplish our customers' success instead? Did they accomplish what they set out to do on our site? And if not, what are we going to do about that? Of course, these paths eventually have to converge. Otherwise, the business is not going to exist for that long. But I think the time has come that we have to start this journey. So finally, to wrap up, the last idea is to embrace a beginner's mind. Our customers are different from us. They will always surprise us. And we need to proceed with a healthy dose of humility. And literally, our customers are beginners when they come to our site for the first time. They're going to experience it completely differently than we experience it every day as super users. And we have to remember that. And thinking back to people watching, we are not our customers. So let's quickly review. Add more qualitative data, become a detective, make time for the why, broaden your definition of success, and embrace a beginner's mind. We as a team at Brooks Bell will be adopting these this year in our approach, and we're going to be encouraging you to join us in this effort. So let me leave you with this quote. In the beginner's mind, there are many options, and in the expert's mind, there are few. You're surrounded by 100 people have come here today with different stories, and as Jason said last night, we all have different perspectives to share. Imagine what we can learn from each other in the next 2 days if we really listen. And that's what Click Summit is really about. It's about discovering new ways of thinking. It's about thinking bigger. It's about taking more risks. It's about questioning what we think we know. And this is your opportunity to experience this with fresh eyes and an open mind. So let's get started.